Welcome to Birds of a Feather, conversations about the relationships that determine our paths to success, who wins and who doesn't. My name's Jeremy, co-founder of Feather, and today I'm joined by Stephen Oomen, a driving force in relationship-led business. With over 2 decades of experience in senior leadership roles at Microsoft, Accenture, Outreach, and he's owned and operated 9-figure revenue portfolios. Stephen is also the author of The Referral Effect, a TEDx speaker, and he focuses on how trust, relationships, and referrals drive outsized growth in modern business. Today, he's helping organizations turn those very principles into repeatable systems that accelerate revenue and deepen client relationships. I'm so happy to have you here. We were talking about this as we were getting ready. You truly are birds of a feather. So thank you for being with me on the show today.
Well, gosh dang, man, that intro was like I can't remember if I told you that or you just learned that on your own, but that was one heck of an intro. I was like, did I do that? Is he talking about me? That's awesome, man.
Yeah, we're gonna grab that as a soundbite afterwards, and then you can just drop that in every podcast that you're on, so that way just bring me along to ride with you, man. That's all.
Hey, y'all want to intro me? I got you. Let me intro you to somebody. It's my real MC.
I love it. Amazing. All right, so everyone's in for a treat, and I would really love for us to kind of start off with The Referral Effect, the book that you've written. And maybe you can just talk a little bit about it, what it means to you, what was the inspiration behind writing it?
Oh, I love that. And I want to make the distinction between written and published. It is written, probably going to still have some tweaks and things before we actually publish it and release it. But I will tell you this. But if anyone wants a pre-read, feel free to reach out. Always down to get input. The impetus for writing it. It was fascinating because after I left corporate, the reason I left was actually to spend time with family, sit with my kids. There was something that my oldest child had said to me that hit me in the heart, and I've shared that story before, but I won't bore the audience with it today. But just know that I was being an absentee father. And I was like, you know what? I just need to spend more time at home. So after I left corporate, 2 weeks into it, I swear it felt like I was going to have a mental breakdown because I was so bored. I mean, I love my kids, but when you're so used to being in the workforce, working 60, 80 hours a week, just stopping cold turkey. No one prepares you for that. And so I called my coach and I'm like, what do I do? And one of the things that she asked me, it was spot on. She goes, well, what are you good at? And I said something that she just started cracking up at because I go, man, God has only gifted me in about 3 things. Everything else in life I suck at. So she starts laughing and she's like, all right, I got to hear what are the 3 things? And I said, onstage public speaking, sales, and leadership/coaching. And she starts grinning and I go, why are you grinning? And she goes, because all 3 of those are extremely valuable and monetizable. Now, here's the thing, though. I do love writing. Do not get me wrong. But the truth of the matter is, and this is just the absolute truth, and what has turned as a tactic has actually turned into a mission. The actual reason for the book was because as an author and getting the message out there, you have a little bit more distribution. It helps you get the visibility to be able to speak on stage and spread this message in a different way. So it's just a different medium. That was the original intent. But as I got into it and started writing, what I continued to realize is that the last 15 years, and I'm not going to say anything that is groundbreaking or earth-shattering, what I think is what I'm writing in the book actually is very, very groundbreaking in my opinion. And here's the reason why. We're living in a world where everybody believes the technology is going to do all the work for us. But we are very quickly finding out that no one likes the fake, no one likes the lack of trust. And so the people with the right relationships are winning, and I believe will always win more often than not. That's just my opinion. But I was speaking to one of the education services employees at one of the top universities. Actually, it was one of the board members who shared what this employee said. And he goes that this university employee said that their students are struggling because they don't know how to build relationships from scratch. And they keep telling people to go out there, provide value, do all these things. Sounds good. Like everybody says, bring value, solve problems, create relationships. But no one actually teaches who you need to be, what you need to do, and then actually how you need to go do it. And so everyone's teaching these like just maybe these tactics, and that's cool. But if you're not the right person, if you don't know how someone thinks when they go into it, you're going to show up very differently. So I cover all three of those because I'm tired of everyone just like half. I don't want to curse on a podcast because I was like, what's the right word to say it? But they halfway do it. And I want to give people the full scope. So that's the long-winded answer to that question.
It's so relevant today because, and I know when we first met, we were talking a little bit about this, but automating ourselves out of the human connection is not an option. Yeah. And what's happening is like the more automation that's happening and the less authentically we all become, the more surface level those relationships are. And like we actually lose trust. I really believe that we are in a tricky situation, whereas we like put more in the hands of ChatGPT and Claude and these big LLMs to go like be us, that we're kind of losing some of our identity and some of the stuff that makes us human. And so I think teaching people the how, especially the anchoring on that third pillar there, is so critical. It's like I spent a lot of time in sales and sales leadership, and it's one thing to go and shout from a scoreboard. There's a whole different story on like, hey, let's go figure out like who you are, how you operate, what you're up against, and get in the trenches and roll up the sleeves together. So I think that's awesome.
I'll share one thing that I'm just going to challenge back just a little bit, is that there's that book, I think it's Who Not How, but I actually don't believe that any one part is more important than the other because it all breaks down. So when people say, well, sales is the most important part of a company, but no, you need all of it. You need HR, you need operations, you need sales, you need all of it. Same thing. You need the who. You've got to be the right person. If you're not the right person, just the how may not work as well. If you don't have the how, just because you're the right person, if you don't know what to do, like everything is equally important. And sometimes we over pivot, but there is some chronology to it. So there is importance from a like who perspective. I actually think the who becomes chronologically more important. But then some people have tried to automate and scale, and then they'll say that's why the how is important as well. So, I can see it both ways, but that's why the more I think about it, it's all equally as important. It's where do you prefer to focus? Because everything works, nothing doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Point well taken. I think you have to put in the effort across and be well-rounded across all of those areas as well. But let's go a little bit deeper into like how did this even happen for you? And so I have a question. When you think about, your career path and your career trajectory, and I think about mine, it's pretty easy to say like most careers aren't specifically hinging on strategy because there's so much uncontrollable things. But in a lot of cases, they do hinge on meaningful key relationships that happen. And I could think of a lot of people who have I wouldn't even be a dad or a friend or, a leader or trying to go build this company without having some amazing people that have like challenged me to be better. I'm curious if there's anybody that stands out in your mind throughout the course of your career who's, changed their trajectory.
Oh my gosh, there's so many. I mean, if I was a kid, it'd be my next door neighbor. You think about Dave Blanchard, he's the CEO of the Ogmandino Group. If anyone knows Ogmandino, the greatest salesman in the world, he bought the rights to that. So absolutely changed my life. Olivia Lockwood, who's one of the best coaches on the planet. Felix Chivandire, who's one of the best leadership coaches on the planet. I mean, I could go on and on. John Weaver, who taught me challenger selling. And, when he was at ADP, one of the best salespeople on the planet, best leaders. I could go on and on and on. Obviously you've got the basics of the family and everything like that, but this is the context of professions, I think, if that's the point of your answer. But if you think about who I am, yeah, you've got your parents, you've got your family, you've got your wife and kid, like all that stuff is there. But man, those are the first, what I say, 4 names. Yeah, those are the first 4 names that jump out when I think about greatest impact.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, that answer, because I intentionally ask it kind of open-ended to see like where do you go, right? And there's so many different types of relationships, of people that enter our lives at different points in time. You've got a lot of things that you're working on, and you're on the road a lot. You're a family man. You got like, how are you keeping up with people today?
Oh, it's hard. Like the first quarter of this year, I told people I was going through my phone and I was texting people. I said, hey, I've been a hypocrite. Like I've been on the road and I have just been tired. And sometimes when you're tired, you don't do the things that you're supposed to do. So we go through these ebbs and flows of seasons. And so as much as I preach this, I'm not always perfect. And really what I do to keep in touch with people, if someone pops into my head, I will literally just text them in the moment. And something might remind me of them. So the big thing that I try to do is give them context. What specifically reminded me of them? Because we are living in a world of distrust. So and I want my brand to be like, oh, he's not out here, texting me just to pitch me. But if I'm needing something from them, I'm very clear. Hey, I need your help on something. So that's why I'm reaching out. I try not to mix the two. Or if I am reaching out for help on something, I say that first. And then I'm saying, and also how's everything going? That sort of thing. Right. But if it's like late at night, I'll do delay send. Right. If it's like 11 o'clock at night and I think of someone, then I delay send till the morning. So they're not like getting pinged in the middle of the night. But that's as simple as it is if somebody comes to mind, I do that. And then every, like once a week or so, I'll just start scrolling through my phone and just figuring out who have I not reached out into a while. And then the last part is very targeted. It's who do I know in certain areas that I'm trying to get into and just learn more about. And I tell them, hey, I give them a context. I'm like, hey, the reason I'm reaching out is because I literally know you're in this space. I was thinking about it. And I was like, who do I know in this space that I need to keep in touch with? Just be honest about it. And that's as simple as it is. Not a whole lot of rocket science there.
Yeah, but I think that's important, because being direct, like people can smell BS a mile away, right? Yeah. It's like I haven't heard from you in 3 months, and or 3 years or 5 years, and you're kind of popping up, and so I think if there is a need, especially in today's job market, too, so a lot of people are resurrecting old relationships to go get a warm intro, to go get an at bat, move the resume up the stack. Like, sounds like you just got to be direct. I'm curious, let's go back to the times that you were building and leading big enterprise teams, and think about some of the best individual contributors or leaders on your teams. What do you think those 1%ers are really doing on a regular basis around building and maintaining relationships and helping them to succeed?
Yeah, I'll actually just share with you somebody that did not report to me. They are an enterprise seller because I just did an interview with them. I was interviewing them for the book. They're, perennial club winner, all that kind of stuff. And then I'll also share with someone that worked directly for me, because they're in different situations, but kind of the same thing. I think, so I a lot of time use the seed in the soil mentality, or sorry, not mentality, methodology or analogy. Sellers are really seeds. And you can be great seed in terrible soil. So when I think about this relationship aspect, a lot of times this stuff is cultivated by the situations we're in. Because as a seed, you've got, fertilizer, you got water, you got sunlight, you got the farmer that cultivates all this kind of stuff. And so in this interview, it was validating, because one of the things that I install in companies is a go to network culture. Yes, you can still go to market, but let's go to network as well, right? It's a yes and. It doesn't have to be either or, but we all know that relationship-based, referral-based, introduction-first selling significantly, like it's not even close, closes at a much higher rate than just cold outbound or whatnot. And you still need both, right? And so the reason I was talking about the culture and the situation you're in is because what I asked this person was, hey, I know that you typically always ask for a relationship first, ask for a referral first, and all that type of stuff. He's like, yeah, I go on LinkedIn, I use Team Link and all this stuff. And I asked this very question, and this will be in the book, and I'll reveal who it was and all that type of stuff. I go, because he said that, actually, the way I asked, I go, if you reach out to the same employee at your company that you see is connected to multiple people throughout your fiscal year, how do you not annoy them? And he goes, oh, our company's leadership style is that we are all revenue drivers together. And this is the culture that I want to install everywhere. So he said, I don't care. This was amazing to hear. He goes, I don't care if I ping the same person 15 times in a row. To have that level of confidence, that's a cultural dynamic. That's awesome to hear. And that's a leadership dynamic. So that's one when you think about people who go out, find relationships. Now, the only reason they would introduce him is because he's a stud. He does his job. He shows up well. He does the research. He does all the things that I talk about. If anyone sees my post about the 5 C's of referability, to have great relationships, you have to be of great character. You have to have competence, credibility. You have to know all these different types of things. You have to have conviction in what you do, clarity in your message. Like, all these things have to be there. The second person, now he reported directly to me at Microsoft. I swear to God, it was like a magician. You could put him anywhere and all of a sudden the account would just turn around, because what he did is he would show up with the attitude of service, as well as the attitude of an expert. He knew their business. He knew the industry. He knew the technology. He knew those sorts of things. So he could be not only a peer to those individuals, the competence was sky high because he studied. That's the big thing. To be competent, you got to study. But he came at it with, he wanted to use his knowledge, his expertise to serve. And every customer you put him in, they loved him. And so there are some things that have to be done in the who, but like, that's what I've always seen is those 5 C's always, always, always present in the best relationship builders and the best people and my top performers.
That's awesome. You know, what you said, and one thing that really is standing out to me is this go to network mentality, and it has to come from the top down. You know, I spent time in really awesome companies like CA Technologies and Zscaler and App Dynamics and, you know, a whole bunch of others. And in the enterprise software space, at least from my background, I feel like there's a misalignment in how most organizations structure their organization around go-to-market, because teams rent account patches and contacts from the CRM or from the company. But like that relationship where, you know, we went on a family vacation together after we did a bunch of deals, you became a champion, and that trust is not something that I can transfer to Sarah that picks up, you know, your new account because you're in her territory now. And so I feel like there's a misalignment there. And I'm curious just to get your thoughts, like, how can an organization change their culture if that's what they've anchored to for so long?
I had this conversation earlier today, and I want to borderline scream when I'm about to say what I'm about to say, because it doesn't have to be hard. Like, we have to be empathetic. We have to understand the world that we're in. And it's not any leader's particular fault. What it is we have to go alongside them, because when the masses are moving in a certain direction, the market is trying to tell everyone, because there's some incentive to tell everyone that AI is the way, technology is the way, automation is the way, right? So totally get that's the world we live in. But what happens is this: when I talk to a CRO, a CEO, any leader, and I say, hey, do you have a structure to how you generate pipeline? The answer is typically, if they're an enterprise type company, even mid-market, or even if they don't, let's say they're not a mature sales organization, Typically, they'll have some basic metrics around dials, emails, pipeline, those sorts of things. But around relationship building and warm referrals or introductions first, they assume, well, if you're a seller, you should naturally have those skills, talents, and behaviors. Yeah, but if you're not measuring for that, they're not going to utilize that near as well. And then over time, your behaviors and skills start to have attrition to them. They start to atrophy because we're focused in these other areas. And so they think of warm outbound, they think of referral, they think of this partnership or referral relationship-based approach as ethereal, long-term, and something that just happens over time, when in reality, if you think about how a program is built, they put a program around all these other things, those exact same metrics. You have to have a goal, you have to have KPIs, you have to have metrics. You do the same thing over here. Who's a center of influence you've met this week? What are the goals in terms of pipeline? How many partners, how many referral channels have you reached out to? How many meetings have you had where it's one-on-one explaining to the next person, hey, this is my perfect ICP? There's a lot of things that you can build in that program that all of a sudden accelerates it within 1 to 2 weeks, which is why I can generate introductions and pipeline in less than 21 days, usually within 7 to 14 days. I always say 21 days to give a little bit of a buffer, because you have to be ready. You have to have leadership's buy-in. You have to have the organizational movement, but you have to believe in that culture. And what happens is most leaders believe in it. They just don't actually know how to execute it, because they don't have someone alongside them to walk with them. And that's why I always think about grace, empathy, because when you're a leader, I mean, a lot of people who have never been in those seats don't realize how much time and pressure and all that stuff it takes into your life, which is why I always have so much empathy and grace in those situations.
Yeah, it's really resonating with me what you're saying, that like, it's one thing to like talk, it's a whole different other thing to have a practice around the walk. And if you can't measure it, then you can't figure out how to make it better. And it sounds like there's definitely ways of measuring it, in parallel to traditional like leading indicators, right? So I still think though that like there's another, and maybe this is something we can explore today or in a future conversation too, but there's another thing that kind of causes a problem for relationship management or trust, is that it's in these walled garden environments where like a person is treated as a record and that record is owned by the company. Like, I'm gonna eventually get promoted or go to a different company and move somewhere else, and like, Stephen's my man. Like, we built a relationship. We went on a family vacation together. He got a lake house because of his promotion from the deal that we did, whatever that looks like. And I feel like companies are trying to put their arms around that, and like you can't like write that into a field somewhere and then just like hand it off. And so I have this theory that as companies become more aware of what you're talking about and people embrace that culture and there is more of this, like, we're winning together, even if we're stack ranked in sales and go to market, that you could take your book with you.
Yeah.
And my value to the company can anchor more to the relationship capital that I've built through developing meaningful connection with people in a world full of kind of like automated, noise. At least that's kind of how I'm thinking about it. Curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. It's always it depends answer, but yes, I do agree with you. It depends on the industry, the type of company, and product market fit. When I say product market fit, I actually mean the viability or the impact that that product and service has made in said company, and has it delivered the outcomes, not just delivered the right amount of service, but delivered great outcomes. Because it's very hard for me, even as a company, if something is working for me, whether I have a relationship or not, like, that relationship absolutely matters. Now, if that relationship then says this is a better and you are losing money based on this X, Y, and Z, and I trust them, Yes, it matters. But remember the 5 C's. There's credibility. If this is a top performer, if this is a relationship that cares about me, they're not going to sell me something that's not best for me. They would know that. But then again, they probably wouldn't leave a superior product to go to an inferior product. That's a habit of top performers. Sometimes they might because they want to grow and do something else, or go into a startup. There's all sorts of reasons. There's exceptions, absolutely, and there's all sorts of reasons. There's variability to it. So I do think it depends on the industry and what type of product you're selling. If you're selling an ERP, it's not like companies can just switch that out overnight. So there's a lot of different things if you're talking about tech, big machinery, or if it's like a widget or something like that, right?
Totally. I want to go back to one of the things that you were talking about when you're kind of outlining a couple minutes ago, like program around this for an organization. One thing, a keyword I am bouncing around in my head is that you said setting goals. And I was curious, like, can you share a little bit about, like, what do you think of when you think of goals as it relates to relationship management, managing referrals and driving those kind of go-to-network actions?
Oh, such a great question. I'll just give you a couple. Every employee in every company has meetings every week. We are meeting to death, if that's a verb, right? So the reason I get not frustrated, I'm just realizing there might be a misalignment in understanding in the marketplace is because many times when people think about referrals, networking, they think about general open-ended networking, right? And so that's why they think it's a marathon. But if I had 5 meetings last week, and let's say I'm talking to an enterprise, just a B2B seller, B2C seller, anything, and I'm your manager. One of the things I'm asking as we do a debrief of how the week went is, okay, look at the calendar. You had 5 meetings last week. In those 5 meetings, how many referrals did you source? How many new people or new introductions did you get out of those 5 meetings? You were already in the meeting. Even if it was something as simple, you don't have to ask, like, I have this magic question that I teach people to ask, but let's say we water it down and make it super basic. Hey, Jeremy, who do you know that I should know? That's not the magic question, but like if it was that simple, let's say one person every week introduced you to someone new that they think you should know. It's your job to educate them on what you're looking for and all that kind of stuff. So they should know. They shouldn't just be introducing to random people. That goes back to who are you and how do you need to show up so they know what you're about, what's your message and all that kind of stuff. But again, that's an example of a very, very simple metric that you can measure that doesn't take any extra time. And now you're starting to get into different industries. You're getting into different companies. Let's say you're a CSM, customer success manager. Is their manager saying, hey, did that customer, you had 20 customer calls last week. How many of them introduced you to a potential new customer? How many of them introduced you to their old employer? I mean, they still have relationships. So nobody's like fundamentally building the program around it. And it's not that, some people would say it's hard. It's just that you have to take the time to design it, implement the metrics and all that stuff, and then start measuring against it. Because like you said, what you don't measure, you can't manage. But that's an example of 2 simple weekly metrics that you could just adhere to. And I envision a time, this is what I do with my clients is, imagine this. This is what I hope that if somebody listens to this podcast, go implement this. Even if you don't utilize me, go do it, report back to me, tell me how awesome it is. Let's say you have a company, I don't care, 1,000 employees, 500 employees, 10,000 employees. We build a president's club for just the sellers, just the go-to-market team. Imagine if the top 5 employees in the company who referred the most business, generated the most pipeline, doesn't matter if they're HR, I don't care if the accounts receivable clerk did it, I don't care if it's the janitor. The top 5, top 10, top 20 people got to go on that end of year President's Club trip for being the top referring employees. You're telling me that culture of that company is not going to change drastically for the better, because that means you're going to have raving employees. People talk about raving fans in terms of customers. You want to prove that you have raving fans in terms of employees? Start having them refer people in, because if you work for a company, why would you not want to refer people to your own company? And if you don't, maybe you should find a different company to work for.
Yeah, I love that, and I think it's like so painstakingly simple. In fact, I had a conversation with an SVP in an insurance company earlier today, and I asked a similar question. Like who in his ecosystem might find value in the conversation we're having, right? And maybe positioning it that way takes some confidence and some other things, but like it kind of seems like the dumbest, simplest way to go have a going from cold call to warm call, so to speak, right? And being able to have a meaningful conversation. Why aren't people doing that every single conversation?
There's a couple things. I think there's a belief that maybe we don't know the right people, or we don't see, but I really think it's we don't see the value in all people. So I was speaking with the VP, and this is where I realized this, months ago, when he goes, "Hey, it seems like this is more open, blah, blah, blah. It's a lifestyle." And I said, "Yeah." But he took that as in sort of a negative, because he's like, inside the walls of my company, how do I install this? And I'm like, okay, he's thinking this is going to take forever because he doesn't see the value. Well, he may, I shouldn't say that. It's just, he doesn't see the time box of how we get very targeted within, his team. And so many times we say, you know what, I'm trying to break into XYZ manufacturing company. I don't know anyone in XYZ manufacturing company. Okay, nobody on LinkedIn. I don't have any easy ins. Maybe they do that first, but all the people on my team link, they don't actually know that person. Well, that's the extent of where they stop when they look for it. And that's if they do it. Most people will just being taught, send a great email. If you write a business point of view, this is the perfect email. Here's how you do a cold call. Like they see all of that on LinkedIn. But they don't think about, where does this person hang out? What books do they read? What podcasts could they possibly listen to? Who in the ecosystem? What events have they gone to? Where have they commented on? Like thinking to themselves in this certain belief, which is, if I spend an extra 2 to 3 weeks finding the perfect person to borrow their trust, give that trust to me to introduce me to that individual, that will shave off 50% of my long-term deal cycle time. It is so hard. I struggle with it too. So let me be very clear to anyone listening. It is not easy. I made that. I'm actually going to write a post about it. Hopefully I can get it out tonight to post in the morning. I made that same mistake this past week. I literally took a referral from somebody within an organization because it was the first one I found, who did not have the best relationship with the person that I was going after, but it was a relationship, and they said they were willing to refer. Not every relationship is created equal. So doing the work to find like those trusted alignments, it usually takes a little bit longer time, but it's worth it in the end. And so most people think they don't have the relationships, or that it takes too long to create the network. They just don't know how to put the puzzle pieces together, because if you haven't done it, or if you're not being taught that consistently, it's just not top of mind.
Yeah. What's going through my mind right now is that there's some art and there's some science behind it.
Yep.
And you have to experiment with it. And on the other front is the emotional, like I need to commit 2 things. 1, that I am going to try this, and 2, that I'm going to show up as my best self. So it's your point of having credibility. If I haven't earned loyalty through building trust, because I don't have the window of time to go build the trust, and I'm borrowing that from you to go introduce, like I better show up well for you. I better have a meaningful impact to you. I better be able to elevate your capital to others. Like I better be able to deliver value to you or at least give you the confidence that by making the introduction, it's going to help you elevate as well. Because in my my belief is that, like, as people master this, there will be a question of how does Jeremy choose who he introduces when 10 people are asking for that same introduction. And so now it comes back to like prep, right? And this kind of brings me to like the second to last question here, which is now bring AI back into it. Now bring automation back in. Now bring the tooling, which allows us, if prep gives us the ability to connect the dots to figure out that, like, hey, this person has this type of ICP. They like these things. They hang out here. Here's somebody that I think could get me to that person. Aren't we watering down each other's second degree networks by doing that? And I guess the real question is, like, when we start to bring in the AI, the automation, like, what is that really doing to the relationship piece of it?
So I think it speeds it up. It can be good and bad depending. It's like anything else. How someone uses a tool is more important than the tool itself. If you have all these automated email tools, well, people are using it to spam everyone. Probably not a good use of the tool, right? So it just depends. But if you're utilizing it to be able to have a strategic, structured follow-up, so you don't forget, because we are human. So it's actually, subsetting or not subsetting, covering up our weakness or helping us overcome our weakness. Hey, great use of the tool. The truth of the matter is, what you just explained is the fact that when I said, hey, we have to go find the trust, I'm doing that anyways. So if AI can help me shorten that and go do the very thing that I'm doing anyways, I don't think there's anything ethically wrong with it, morally wrong with it. I think that's a great use of it. Where I think it crosses the line is when it becomes faking that it's me. And notice I said faking. If we're just saying, hey, this is Steven's AI executive assistant, he programmed me to reach out to you for this very reason, to find people like yourself, because he actually wants to have a conversation with you. If that's like upfront and say these were the parameters, like being honest, transparent, that sort of thing, cool. But this whole idea of, but he actually wants to meet with you. He wants to get to know you. But for sake of time and all this kind of stuff, he had to make sure people had these type of parameters, things like that. For me, I might be stupid when I say it, because it may not actually work. I'm not saying that I've implemented that. I'm just saying that's how I think, and that's okay. We're all allowed to have our own opinions, but I do think there is warrant for that, because it just shortcuts the thing I was doing anyways.
Yeah, and I actually talked about this with another person we had on Birds of a Feather, about like the authenticity behind intention. And yeah. So if to your point, like if you spend 10 hours prepping for this meeting and the meeting goes better for the people that are a part of the meeting, they're happy, right? If you spend 10 minutes prepping for the meeting and the meeting goes better because you spent 10 minutes prepping for the meeting and they're happy, like that's a good outcome. Who cares? At the end of the day, I think it's less about like, and this is actually where I think the intersection of the human and the machine come together, which is, can I 1000x myself and still show up in the best, most real, most authentic and intentional ways? And what that does for somebody who's on the other side of it, it allows them to get more value out of that interaction as well, and ultimately creates a win-win situation there.
Yeah. I will give you an antithesis view, and I'm not saying I agree with this or disagree with this. I see both sides. So here's what I'm about to share with you, because I have thought about this quite a bit actually. Robbing me of the ability to go through the process, does that shortcut or short cycle my ability to learn? Does it have a negative impact on myself cognitively in some form or fashion? We say we're more productive, but for all the things that I do, I'm sitting in a chair. Whereas if I was in the olden times, I'm more active, I'm in fresh air. Like there's pros and cons of both. And so if I'm 100xing myself, I think about the load that eventually it puts on me. I'll give you a great example. I was with a healthcare company. We were talking about like dental hygienists as an example. If you help dental hygienists be more productive, and see more patients through the day, they're actually more exhausted. If you can shortcut their process or anything like that. So when you go and sell and say, I can save them an hour and a half a day, what would you do with that hour and a half? The answer might not actually be see more patients, because now you're actually burning them out even more, right? So it's just an example where greater productivity may or may not be the actual answer to happiness, lifestyle. It just depends on what we're optimizing for, but it's just something to always consider. Because I'll tell you, I mean, I'm exhausted at times. Like when I have all this at my fingertips, I'm like, dang, right? So it all depends on what gives you energy. That's actually, I think, the biggest question we should ask ourselves. What's depleting our energy and what's giving our energy?
So good. I love that. I think that's so spot on. And so it's not just about 100x to do more. It's about 100x to be more precise across the right people and the construct of what helps us to succeed in that moment. And I think that, going back to your point about it's how I use a tool, right? So like if I use a tool to go research 10,000 prospects and send 10,000 emails and got 10,000 meetings, they probably would be all pretty bad meetings, right? So if you don't have that other lens on it, it's like, hey, instead of having 10,000 meetings, I actually need to have 3 really good ones. Mm-hmm. So like, help me be really good at finding the right 3 people and showing up best for those people in this moment today. And yeah, and then that unlocks a lot, right? Whether it's growing the business, whether it's retaining your team, whether it's just giving you some time back to go see the kids or get to the gym, like whatever that looks like. And that's the efficiency. And I think when you look at systems of action right now in AI space, everyone kind of conflates this concept of AI, of like AI is to go and, do more stuff, send more notes, write more things. And it's like, everyone can tell that this is generated from, especially when you get the name wrong or the company wrong or whatever that is. That's really
or
easy.
If there's a hi basketball emoji.
Yep, right, exactly. I've joked around about this a few times. Like I've had the ones that come in with the that kind of like squiggly bracket.
Oh yeah, first name.
Yeah, right. I think that the other piece of it too is actually finding a way to be curious and human, and like that's a very like amazing thing that creates magic in life that you can't script in the, hey, like just getting to know somebody. To your point you were saying earlier, it's like, I just want to get to know you. Like, tell me about what you like, right? Like, talk about something that interests you. What's challenging? Like, let me get to figure out like who you are. Can we actually rock on whatever is important together? And I feel like you can't do that at scale. In fact, there's very famous anthropologist named Dr. Robin Dunbar, and he talks about like the max capacity for the humans' meaningful relationships at this 150 mark.
Yes.
It's based off our brain capacity, right? So like, could I go and have relationships with 5,000 people if I had a bunch of digital clones of myself? Yes, potentially. But like, is it really a human relationship? Is it real social connection? Is it really meaningful? I don't know. Maybe our brains change with AI as we go, but
maybe. But I'll tell you something, and I know we've probably got to finish up soon, but I'll just tell you this. There's been semi-research done on this where if you that 150 is spot on. There's a lot of books on this about your closest circle, your peripheral circle, your outer circle, all these things in terms of relationships. But if you look at the average wedding, usually it's about 200 people. If you look at the average funeral, it's about 200 people. So if you actually think about like what we're trying to accomplish in life, we talk about community, and I think somebody told me about this the other day on Netflix. If you watch the show Live to 100, it talks about maybe it was you that told me that, I can't even remember, but it's these 5 areas that have the highest concentration of 100-year-olds. And one of the biggest things they do is live in community, proximity community, not digital communities, but proximity communities too. And they actually have friend conversations. But I know that sometimes people just don't want to be friends. They're busy with their family and they spend the rest of their time with business stuff. So the only way they're friends is if there's some perceived business value. So it's a yes and you want to have power by proximity and all this kind of stuff. So again, it depends on what you're after. Are you after just money, or are you after just, power and that kind of stuff? If you want to live to 100, it's probably not about that, right? And if you want to be healthy, these are healthy 100-year-olds, and they move and they eat and they do those sort of things. But the big thing was the community, just being around other people. So
yeah, the Harvard did a study called the Study of Adult Learning, where they looked over nine plus decades. Dr. Robert Waldinger, he kind of is the executive director over the study, and what he talks a lot about is that the single most important success factor to longevity is social connection. And so tying back into what you're talking about with the centenarians, like that all fits back in. And I really think, you said the seed and the
soil.
Seed and the soil. When I think about what that means to me is like, there's so much growth that can happen if we actually invest into those seeds and grow those relationships. And they may, in many cases, start in this like transactional, hey, you're helping me, I'm helping you, we're doing something, we're working together. But like, it's amazing how life can just open up joyful moments and opportunities when you actually care and you put in the time. And when Feather first started, we were really going after solving that, and we're calling it social fitness. And we were looking at like, hey, like we put a lot of time into the gym, but do we put a lot of time into like exercising our relationship the right way? So we'll hopefully get there as a world at some point. I feel like AI is in this automation, and this lack of authenticity is kind of the impetus for a need to change on some of those topics. But like you said, we're almost at the end here, and I want to wrap up with one final question. So for anyone who's sticking around with us, what is one thing that is meaningful that we can all put into practice today that you think can help us on this topic with improving the quality of our relationships?
I don't know why this popped up in my head, but it's two things, and I'll relate the two because you ended on the seed and the soil, is to be very clear in every situation, either whether you're the seed or whether you're the soil, whether you're the farmer, whether you're the sunlight, the first, like which position are you in? And at all times, are you both at the same time? Because the seed is the one that kind of sits around, and you could be great seed and everyone has to pour into you. But sometimes you're the soil. You've got to cover someone else up. You've got to help them. You've got to grow other people, right? And so it just reminds me of something, love your neighbor as yourself. So sometimes you got to know that you're the seed and you got to take care of yourself, and that's okay. And love your neighbor as yourself. We're both just as important. And so when you think about the relationship integrity has both pieces. So take care of the other person, take care of yourself. If either of you are broken, that relationship isn't going to work near as well. So just make sure you always understand, are you the seed or the soil, or what portion are you playing in any relationship?
It's awesome. Solid. What a great way to wrap this one up. This has been incredibly insightful. And like I said, you are birds of a feather. That's why I'm so happy to have you on here with us. Before we go, can you tell the folks who are listening, if they want to get a hold of you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, go on LinkedIn, Stephen Oomen, Stephen. I know you'll see it under there, but I'll pronounce it correctly. It was funny. I hope we get that blooper or whatever into this. But it's Stephen with a hard PH. Oomen is Oommen, but literally I have open DMs. You can schedule time with me. There's a networking chat. My calendar's online. So if you'd just like to have a networking chat for 15 minutes, feel free to reach out. Or if you want me to come speak or train your sales team, there's a lot of different ways that we can meet, work together. So I definitely appreciate it.
It's awesome. Everybody out there, thank you for listening in. Of course, if you want to check out what we're doing at the intersection of human connection and AI with Feather, check us out at www.feather.vip. My name's Jeremy. This has been Birds of a Feather. Thanks, and we'll catch you next time. Last name is Oomen.
Perfect. That was very perfect as it can be.
Amazing.
Yeah, you said it better than me.
Yeah. I told you last time that we were talking that I was a Punjabi wedding MC for a long time, and so I had to practice a lot of names. I remember there was one time, that's totally off topic, but I was doing a party at the Westin in New York City, and right as I was getting ready to go introduce everybody to the room, bride and groom walk out with like 6 pages of loose leaf paper. And it was everybody, because it was a huge party. It was like they wanted me to introduce every single person, essentially. It's like, and I'm like trying to read names and like figure out.
You were studying the night before. It was like practicing for your SATs. No, trust me, I get it. When you have 14-letter long names, it's yeah. I'd rather maybe take the SATs.
Yeah.